So we are joined here by former State Representative Victor Mitchell, one of a number of Republicans running for governor. What do you make of the student walkouts today? The kids out demanding school safety and gun control.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on your show. My wife and I are a big fan. We watch it regularly.
That will get you no leniency here, but I appreciate that.
Well, fair enough.
To the issue of the students, saw them walk out en masse today across Colorado and the country. They want better school security. They want gun control. What do you think?
You know, I think these kids are courageous, and I think they should be heard, and I'm proud of these kids. You know, we've become desensitized to these school shootings, these mass killings. And Colorado has a tortured history when it comes to Columbine and Aurora and Arapahoe High School, Bailey High School. I don't have a great deal of confidence in our federal government to get this resolved. I think our Congress is terribly dysfunctional. I think we're going to require an aggressive task force, take the politics out of it, and put together a group of very smart people, such as behavioral therapists, FBI profilers, people that have really studied this. We should have the gun people there. We should have the people anti-gun people, and we should take the politics out of this. I mean, we have to be respectful to the Second Amendment, and we have to also be respectful that there's 300 million guns in circulation. But there's something rotting why we've even gotten to this point where so many people have said, you know, listen, I think I want to shoot up a school. I mean, this is a unique challenge to this particular generation. But we can get on top of this. We need to have a different approach.
So are you prescribing a policy outcome there, or simply let's get some non-political people in the room with the political people and let them sort it out?
Take the political people totally out of it. I don't have, as I said earlier, I don't have a great deal of confidence. When you have a structure in the United States Congress where you're running for office every 2 years, and many of them there's no term limits. They're taking hundreds of millions of dollars of special interest money. You're not going to get a good outcome. We need to deal with this at the state level. We need to have, as I said, a task force with a specific action plan that they can put forward. And it's going to be a multifaceted plan. It's not going to be any one solution, but everything should be on the table. And we have to get to the bottom of this. There's been too much tolerance of this. I mean, I have a 14-year-old daughter today, and I have 3 kids in total. And the notion that we've allowed this to keep happening over and over again, and we're not getting to issues around mental health. We have to get to issues around HIPAA, which has been a big challenge as well. We have to get to issues around all types of different challenges associated with gun violence.
Last thought on this, you mentioned delegating some authority and decision-making, or at least the ideation, to this task force. I remember when Governor Ritter was made fun of ceaselessly for convening all kinds of commissions and panels and things like that. You don't think that has a negative connotation to it?
You know, right now, we know that I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment. And I think, can you tell me any law, Kyle, any law, that would have prevented any of these school shootings? Because I can't come up with one. I've asked the same question of my liberal friends on the left. There is no single panacea. I don't believe that, you know, taking people's lawful citizens' rights away is going to solve anything. We have a crisis in our state and our nation when it comes to mental health. We have a crisis of school security that we have to put everything on the table, including possibly allowing certain select educators to possibly carry. It have to be approved by local school boards. They'd have to get additional compensation and additional training.
Schools in Colorado have zero appetite in that. Only the smallest rural schools, even your very conservative suburban and urban areas, zero appetite for it. That appears to be a total non-starter. Let me ask you about this. So
I don't know. I'd have to push back on that. I've been around the state. We've done 500 events in 60 counties, and I can tell you that we have 173 school districts in our state. There's a good amount of school districts, superintendents that think we should actually have a discussion about that.
They've got to convince their school boards. That's where we're not seeing any movement on this. You have stressed your qualifications as an entrepreneur and a business leader on the campaign trail. I'm sure we'll hear about that in your ads and your speeches. Let me ask you this. What is one way in which the state government is not like a private business and should not be run like a private business?
I mean, we have to have a safety net, obviously, for the downtrodden. Let me give you one example. Mental health. Mental health is exactly the opposite of primary care. Primary care is very predictable, can be done very affordably, cost effectively, although we've now had an explosion in Medicaid, of course, here in Colorado, so it's being done just the opposite, where many people have insurance and can't even access quality primary care because they can't meet their deductibles. But mental health is an example that can't really be done, at least today, very cost effectively through private insurance. So a government role should play a much larger role when it comes to mental health, because every person has a unique chemistry chemistry, and some require inpatient, some require outpatient. Dosages work for one patient but doesn't work for another, even though they have generally the same symptoms. So mental health would be another example that should be done much more aggressively through government. But generally speaking, I think we have had such an overreach in our state government. People don't fully appreciate how regulated we are today. We've had under this current administration has added 120,000 pages of rules and regulations, and make no mistake about it, most of it's adversely affecting small business. So we are really overregulated. Young people today think they can do better working in government than they can in the private sector. The government doesn't create any wealth in our society, it's the private sector. So we got to create pathways for young people to start jobs, to start businesses, to where corporate jobs are just not as secure. And we're really inhibiting a lot of our outdoor, rugged culture as a people.
What do you think about the idea of bringing Amazon to Colorado?
I think it's a great idea, but just not 1 red cent of taxpayer money should go towards it. I mean, this is one of the
tax incentives whatsoever.
Zero,
None.
absolutely
None.
not a penny.
Because you don't believe in tax incentives, or you don't believe in tax incentives for Amazon?
Oh no, I completely believe in certain economic tax incentives. I think they should be targeted exclusively for rural and economically challenged communities throughout our state, and they should be targeted to small to medium-sized employers. Employers that can go from 20 employees to 30 employees. Employers that can go from 100 to 150 employees. It could be a high-tech manufacturer. It could be a life science company, but not one penny. This is a company, this is the most ridiculous thing I've heard from this administration, because Amazon is worth $650 billion. Their stock gyrates every day more than any economic incentives, and you and I and all the taxpayers of Colorado are going to give one of the richest companies in the world, their CEO is now richer than Bill Gates. We're going to give them $1 billion of Colorado tax money. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. And it doesn't mean anything to Amazon. It has no impact on their business.
You said rural and economically disadvantaged. Rural and or economically disadvantaged, or tax incentives only in rural areas that are taxed?
Primarily in rural areas, Western Slope, Eastern Plains, San Luis Valley communities that, we have a tremendous urban and rural economic divide. And before I started this journey, I had never been to places like Crowley County, where they sold 100% of their water, where a mom said to me, Vic, my daughter is at CSU and she's about to graduate. She doesn't want to come home. There's nothing here for her anymore. It's heartbreaking. So we have to really bridge that urban and rural divide. We need a governor for all 64 counties.
I think there are people, though, in Pueblo and Grand Junction that would tell you that you don't have to be rural to be economically struggling these days.
That is true. I mean, but we also have a very low unemployment rate. But there's a large of this thing is there's no question about it. The Front Range is a different economy than the Western Slope and Eastern Plains communities. And I think all Coloradans should be able to have the opportunity to pursue whatever their passions are. But government has a function. But right now we have had such an overreach of regulations, nanny state, and we have to cut back on that. I mean, we have to really get back to our individualistic, rugged, people that we generally are.
I want to finish on the idea of immigration. Polling suggests that's an important issue to Republican primary voters. So long as they're complying with federal law, if Denver wants to be really hands-off and not lift a finger to help immigration agents other than how they have to under the law, and say a rural county, Mesa County, wants to be much more involved in helping the feds, why not allow each of them to pursue their individual approaches?
Because it's a matter of security. It's a matter of the fundamental role of any elected official is uphold the Constitution. And when you're saying, listen, I like this law, we're going to enforce it. I don't like this law, I'm going to ignore it. I mean, that's anarchy. I mean, these elected officials have sworn to uphold the Constitution. If they want to change the law, change the law. Go to the state legislature, go to the federal government, change the law. But you can't ignore it. So I think there should be real consequences to cities that generally will refuse to adhere to to cooperate with federal ICE agents.
I want to get into that consequence, but just to clarify, so you believe that local law enforcement should be tasked with enforcing federal immigration law?
I think there should be a cooperation directly when we should not be releasing criminal aliens out into the public and putting the public's safety at risk when they should be cooperating with federal ICE agents.
So you support the idea of civil liability for leaders of sanctuary cities.
I do.
And I want to talk about how that practically would work. So we've seen a number of cases in Denver where ICE has said, please hold this guy. Denver has rightly pointed to case law saying, if we hold him without a warrant, then we're on the hook for it. You have to come and get him. Guy goes loose, something happens. Is that the kind of scenario where you think there would be civil liability? Or are we talking about a different type of scenario?
No, I'm talking about civil liability. I think that would probably go to that example. I mean, there is, of course, our elected officials have immunity today, as in many of our government workers have immunity. So we have to look at that. But, if you're the mayor of Denver today and you're saying, listen, we're going to allow a criminal alien back into our streets, that trumps our state constitution, our federal constitution. We're not going to cooperate with federal ICE agents where people are generally at risk. What would happen if your daughter, something happened to your daughter or son? It's just fundamentally wrong. These are tough issues, but we have to be a state of laws. We can't just choose laws we like and ignore laws we don't. That's anarchy, and it's just not fair. And it's really creating distrust and loss of erosion of confidence in our institutions. We have to start electing competent, ethical, visionary leaders that can actually make a difference in people's lives.
Last question for you. Name a competent, ethical, visionary Democrat in Colorado.
Democrat. You stumped me on that. I thought you were going to ask me across the entire country. I don't study the Democrats that well, so I would probably be misleading you if I gave you an answer. I haven't thought about that. I've been very disappointed with this administration. This administration has really run roughshod over small business, and so many people in Colorado today have health insurance but can't meet their deductibles. 1 in 4 Coloradans are on Medicaid. So I've lost a great amount of confidence, as most people have in Colorado, with the current administration. And we've got to start fixing problems, and we've got to start also allowing some of our great opportunities to be exploited.
Victor Mitchell, thank you for coming in and sharing your views. Hope this is the first of many conversations. Thank you.
I look forward to it. Thank you for having me on.